Tonight's big stories is the Philippines resuming its membership with the ICC. President Bongbong Marcos says it's up for study, although issues on the court's jurisdiction remain.
Defense Secretary Gibo Teodoro says it again, the word pananakop, when describing China's actions in the West Philippine Sea. He said this in reaction to the Chinese military's accusations that the Philippines is, quote, stirring up trouble in the disputed waters when it conducted joint patrols with the U.S.
And President Bongbong Marcos recently said that his administration is putting the semiconductor and electronics industries among its top priority sectors. How can government further improve the semiconductor sector? We'll be speaking with Dan Lachica, president of the Semiconductor and Electronics Industries in the Philippines Incorporated, who will join us later on in the studio. Welcome to The Big Story. I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I'm Dani Laurel.
We're starting the show with President Bongbong Marcos having a busy day today with matters on health and the ICC. The president led the inauguration of Healthway Cancer Care Hospital in Taguig City, the country's first ever hospital dedicated to cancer care. The facility features modern and state-of-the-art equipment on cancer detection and treatment, along with leading medical professionals and oncologists. The president said the facility would pave the way for improved access to quality cancer care and boost the country's potential as a healthcare destination in the region. Well, remember, it was in Marcos Sr.'s time when other pioneering hospitals were built, yung lung center, yung Philippine Heart Center of the Philippines National Kidney and Transplant Institute. I guess the son is following his father's footsteps. In this.
Especially at this time post-COVID, no, when healthcare is such a big issue in the country. We were fraught with all of these issues that were unprecedented before. So hopefully avoiding another repeat of that
Cancer
situation.
is number 3 on the highest reasons for mortality for Filipinos. So this is a pressing concern. Apart from the Cancer Care Center, he also stresses that there are benefits to be obtained from PhilHealth on diagnostic, laboratory costs, and pati yung early detection. That is the key to being able to cure cancer.
And of course, universal health care law that is now being implemented. Another issue that the president managed to address today, Gretch, on another note, is the International Criminal Court's drug war probe. The president actually confirmed that while there is this issue on the ICC's jurisdiction to conduct an investigation into the Duterte administration's drug war, the government is studying calls to cooperate with the ICC probe, including possibly resuming its ICC membership.
Simple lang naman yung issue yan eh. Hindi naman siguro tama na ang mga tigalabas, mga dayuhan, magsasabi sa atin kung sino iimbestigahan ng pulis natin, sinong aarestuhin ng pulis natin, sinong ikukulong ng pulis natin. Hindi naman siguro tama 'yon. Dapat Pilipino lang ang gumagawa niyan. There is also a question, should be returned under the fold of the ICC. So that's again under study. So we'll just keep looking at it and see what our options are.
Well, leave it up to the president to be very diplomatic on the answer. You know, some news outlets took this as a rejection of the ICC, while others are saying, okay, he seems to be open to what the people in the lower house are proposing. At least we visit that.
Former presidential spokesperson Panelo, diplomatic nga lang daw ang presidente, no? Oo, pero recall that Justice Secretary Boying Remulla said they will study the House resolution calling on government to cooperate with the ICC probe. Let's listen into that.
Hindi na ito pwedeng padalos-dalos. O sige, mag-member tayo bukas. O sige, atras tayo. So pagkatapos, yung ating pagkabansa ay magkakaroon ng bahid kung pag ganun-ganun lang tayo. So it really requires serious study.
And then there's that issue, no, is this a personal attack? As per former presidential spokesperson of the Duterte administration, Harry Roque, saying that this being resurfaced is something possibly against the VP, Sara.
Or pwede rin sa kanyang tatay who called the
Correct.
Congress a rotten institution. So
There you go.
Just the timing of things and also the impeachment rumors.
Surrounding VP. But you've got, of course, House Reso author Rep. Benny Abante saying there is nothing personal here with the Dutertes. It's purely a matter of proving to the international community that we have nothing to hide.
Sa akin, personally speaking, na kinakailangan na rin siguro na payagan na natin itong ICC na magkontak ng investigasyon sa ating bansa para makita po nila talaga ang real score, no, ng mga nangyayari. But I'm not actually saying na I am fully confident. They might see something wrong. Lahat naman po ng bansa sa buong mundo talaga naman merong human rights violations.
Well, it's not just former President Rodrigo Duterte that's being implicated in this ICC probe. There's also his PNP chief at the time, Senator Bato de la Rosa. Now let's get his reaction. We have Maricel Halili for the details on that. Mase, go ahead.
Danny, Senator Bato de la Rosa isn't alarmed about this development since the government is still studying the matter and there is still an issue about the jurisdiction. Here is what the former PNP chief had to say.
Well, if the president says categorically that he is allowing ICC to come in and make the investigations, then that's backpedaling. But when he says just studying, maybe there are a lot of possibilities. When he says study, pag-aaralan.
Senator De La Rosa also made it clear that he is willing to face Philippine courts over his role in the Duterte administration's war on drugs. Back in March, if you can recall, De La Rosa already sought the help of his fellow Senator Francis Tolentino, who has agreed to represent him once the ICC moves to trial.
I'm willing to be tried by a Filipino court. By a foreign body, I'm not willing. But it is not an indicator that lalayasan ko kayo. Baka sabihin niyo, sisibat na si Bato, hindi ako lalayas. Harapin ko yan.
Meanwhile, if you ask former Chief Presidential Legal Counsel Sal Panelo, President Marcos's repeated pronouncements on the absence of jurisdiction by the ICC should be supported by the legislature. He adds that President Marcos agreeing to study the House resolution seeking cooperation with the ICC probe was just a courteous and diplomatic response. Danny, this resolution comes on the heels of political tensions in the lower house and speculations about the UNITEAM, but President Bongbong Marcos himself clarified that there is no rift between him and Vice President Sara Duterte. So we'll just have to wait and see what will happen to this International Criminal Court issue and how will it affect the politics here in the Philippines. Danny?
All right, wait and see indeed. Thanks for that update, Mase.
At kung kanina cancer care ang pinag-uusapan natin dito sa Pilipinas, ito naman sa China, there is growing concern about the rising cases of respiratory illness, especially among kids. The World Health Organization is seeking more information into the reported clusters of respiratory illness and pneumonia in northern China. The reported outbreak has left hospitals in the region packed with patients, particularly children. Now, back here in the Philippines, the health department has reached out to international counterparts in trying to get more information about this disease.
Babantayan din natin yan, of course, like any outbreak or clustering. Pag ang tawag dyan yung clustering, may similar cases in one location. In the temperate countries like China, respiratory illnesses really rise during the cold season. I just hope it's just a regular flu or not a new emerging infectious disease.
Well, this is the first winter that China is spending without strict COVID-19 restrictions since the outbreak of the pandemic. Remember, in December 2022, there were protests against China's zero-COVID policy because they were blaming it for the severe outbreaks and the possible immunity debt. Kumbaga, nag-lockdown tayo ng matagal at dahil dito, nung nagbukas tayo, nag-spread yung COVID ulit. And they're wondering if the same thing is
Is
happening
happening
here.
to them. Exactly. There are, anecdotally issues with even the new strains of COVID over in Hong Kong and China are hitting them harder than other places of the
Galing ka
world,
lang
which
doon sa
galing lang
Hong
ako
Kong.
doon,
Oo,
kaka-COVID ko
diba?
lang din doon. Whereas, in the US or even in Europe, they're treating it as the flu already. Still there, it's still very, very strong. But as per even the China's National Health Commission, they're saying that it's common pathogens, at least this one in particular. They're calling it, a common bacterial infection, Mycoplasma pneumoniae, influenza virus, respiratory syncytial virus, adenovirus. So they're still saying that these are common symptoms that cause mild cold or flu-like illnesses.
Kumbaga,
It
walang
happens.
novel.
Oo.
Nothing new.
Nothing
new
too
with
alarming.
what is happening.
Exactly. So
Although
hopefully,
here in the Philippines, we did record 49% increase in flu-like illnesses compared to the past year. Although medyo nagpa-plateau na raw ang
Okay.
influenza-like illness here in the Philippines, we do have to watch out for those symptoms such as cough, fatigue, fever, body
especially
aches.
since wala namang winter dito,
Oo.
diba? So
Yeah,
we have a different
But
climate.
it does thrive in cold, dry, humid, and rainy weather. So if you do have time, do get your flu shot as soon as you can.
Exactly. And of course, wear masks as appropriate and continue social distancing and washing your
Well, a
hands.
sigh of relief there
Even
when
if
they
you
said
can
that there is no novel pathogen detected with
Sana.
this pneumonia outbreak in China, and we hope it stays that way. In the meantime, up next, the Defense Department hits back at China for claiming that the Philippines has enlisted the help of foreign forces to stir up trouble in the South China Sea. More details on that when we return. Welcome back. You're still watching The Big Story here on One News.
The Defense Department reiterates that it's China that is colonizing our waters, or in Secretary Teodoro's words, nananakop ng teritoryo. He said this in reaction to the statement of China's Southern Theater Command accusing the Philippines of, quote, enlisting foreign forces to patrol the South China Sea. The Chinese military says the Philippines stirred up trouble, engaged in hype, and undermined regional peace and stability. Now, these comments did not sit well with Defense Secretary Gibo Teodoro. He said that if there's anyone stirring up trouble in the disputed waters, it's China.
Sino ba pumupukpok sa South China Sea, no? Sa West Philippine Sea, lalo na. It is China. The Philippines is not stirring up trouble. This is the reverse of the truth. It's an absolute falsity for China to say that. Whatever China says about this, I think their credibility is very, very low.
For some background, these joint air and maritime patrols took place from November 21 to 23 near the island of Mavulis, the northernmost island of the Philippines in the Bashi Channel. That's 100 kilometers south of Taiwan, and from there they moved west into the West Philippine Sea. Our News 5 reporter Brian Castillo was among those who witnessed the exercises from above aboard the US P-8 Poseidon aircraft. Brian reported that they saw a Chinese warship tailing the vessels of the Philippine and US troops, and they also spotted a Chinese aircraft in the area. Sabi ng AFP naman, it's nothing new to them. Sabi they also shadow boats of Malaysia, Vietnam that go against their 10-dash line narrative. So apart from sabi nga natin, November 21 to 23 is the joint air and sea patrols with the United States.
US.
Sa November 25 to 27, looks like we have joint maritime patrols in the West Philippine Sea with Australia. And that will cover waters off Palawan and extend to the Ayungin Shoal. So we should watch out for that. But aside from the DND, the National Security Council also blasted China's accusations. Brian Castillo joins us to give us the details. Brian.
That's right, Gretch. The National Security Council says it rejects China's accusations that the Philippines enlisted foreign forces to patrol the South China Sea. The NSC said in a statement that the joint patrols conducted by the Philippines with the U.S. are well within the Philippines' rights as a sovereign nation. They stressed that the conduct of the joint patrols is in accordance with international law, the Mutual Defense Treaty between the U.S. and the Philippines, and the Visiting Forces Agreement. The NSC adds that no country has the right to undermine the Philippines' legitimate actions within its own jurisdiction. With that, they note that there will be more joint patrols to be conducted in our territorial waters. The Defense Department meanwhile noted that there are other nations that have expressed intent to join forces with the Philippines for patrol missions in the West Philippine Sea. These include Japan, Australia, South Korea, and Canada. Those are the latest for now. Back to you, Gretch.
I will be seeing more and hearing more about that, I guess, in the weeks to come. Thank you so much, Brian Castillo. In other news, delegates of the 31st Asia-Pacific Parliamentary Forum failed to arrive at a consensus regarding two resolutions promoting regional peace and stability in the South China Sea. Let's get more details on that from Marian Enriquez. Maan, what happened in day 2 of the forum?
Gretchen, that's right. According to Senator Bato de la Rosa, the 15-member Chinese delegation opposed some provisions in the draft resolutions submitted by the Philippines and Indonesia. Under the resolution filed by Indonesia, it emphasized the need of all APPF member parliaments to encourage unwavering commitment from all Asia-Pacific countries to international laws, including adherence to the UNCLOS. The Philippine resolution, meanwhile, wanted to reaffirm the adherence of the APPF member parliaments to the fundamental principles enshrined in the United Nations Charter and in the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation in Southeast Asia. This includes as well the 1982 Manila Declaration on the Peaceful Settlement of International Disputes and the 1970 Declaration on Principles of International Law concerning friendly relations among states. De la Rosa, however, said that as the Philippines pushed for adherence to law through international bodies, China, on the other hand, wanted to go back to the traditional ways of settling disputes, which meant discussing the matter bilaterally or one-on-one.
According to our rules, there should be a consensus. So meaning, kung meron mang may comment, mayroong reservation, or merong opposition towards a certain draft resolution, ay talagang may babasura yung draft resolution mo.
On China, anything about maritime, anything about UNCLOS, anything about rules-based, ayun. Siyempre, frustrating yun, pero bahagi yun ng rules dito sa APPF. Dapat consensus.
Meanwhile, some senators also commented on China's recent statement accusing the Philippines of using foreign forces to stir up trouble in the South China Sea. This comes after the Philippines and the United States conducted a joint patrol in the West Philippine Sea. For De La Rosa, the Philippines is not the one stirring trouble in the South China Sea. He also asserted the country's right to conduct such military exercises in the area.
Sino nga nag-i-stir ng trouble? Kung trouble ang pag-uusapan, who are the ones who sinong unang nag-i-stir ng trouble by cannoning, by water cannoning our our people. We just want to make sure that our RORE, yung rotation and resupply mission to our ships, to our people in the Ayungin Shoal, doon sa ating barko na aground, no, yung BRP Sierra Madre, can reach to its intended users. So, yun lang ang ating gusto.
Gretchen, the good news is that the two resolutions can still be passed in the forum. According to Senator Bato, they still have a working group that could help in their push for the resolutions. The 31st Asia-Pacific Parliamentary Forum will conclude tomorrow. Gretchen.
All right, thank you so much for those updates, Marian Enriquez.
Meanwhile, President Marcos grants amnesty to some rebels and insurgent groups to, quote, encourage them to return to the folds of the law. Now, under Proclamation number 403, Marcos granted amnesty to members of the Revolucionaryong Partido ng Manggagawa ng Pilipinas, Proletarian Army Alex Boncayao Brigade. Proclamation number 404, meanwhile, provides pardon to former members of the Communist Party of the Philippines, the New People's Army, the National Democratic Front, or CPP, NPA, NDF. The President also issued Proclamation numbers 405 and 406, granting amnesty to the members of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front and the Moro National Liberation Front. Aside from these, Marcos also issued Executive Order number 47 to amend the previous EO, creating the National Amnesty Commission, or the NAC. These amendments update the functions of the NAC to cover the processing applications for amnesty under the new proclamations. Defense Secretary Gibo Teodoro says the granting of amnesty to these rebel groups is a step towards solving the country's insurgency problem. Teodoro adds that they are now just waiting for Congress to give its nod on the amnesties before they can be implemented. He says many rebels have yet to surrender simply because they are unaware of that process.
Wala nang details na pinaplansya. Concurrence na lang ng Congress. Sa aking pagkaalam, bubuuin na naman yung National Amnesty Commission para mavet yung mga qualified recipients ng amnesty. And marami din ayaw mag-surrender dahil may existing warrants of arrest sila. So it's really complementary to this, provided they are bona fide members of the organizations that are mentioned in the Amnesty Proclamation.
Kung tatanungin mo, lahat nga ba ng sala ay mapapatawad na?
Oo.
Hindi lahat. Ang covered crimes lang dito sa amnesty na ito ay crimes whether punishable under the revised penal code or special penal laws, including but not limited to rebellion or insurrection, conspiracy and proposal to commit rebellion or insurrection, disloyalty of public officers or employees, inciting to rebellion or insurrection, sedition, conspiracy to commit sedition, and inciting to sedition.
And not covered naman, Gretch, these things. No, kidnap for ransom, massacre, rape, terrorism, crimes committed against chastity. These are all defined in this revised penal code violation RA number 9165. So, also Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002. These are grave violations of the Geneva Convention of 1949. You've also got genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, torture, and forced disappearances, gross violations of human rights. So in a nutshell, the big crimes are not going to be pardoned.
Well, up next, the Philippines continues to be a major hub for semiconductor manufacturing services. And when we return, we'll check in on the industry's growth with Dan Lachica, President of the Semiconductor and Electronics Industries in the Philippines, Incorporated, live here in the studio. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back. You're still watching The Big Story here on One News.
President Bongbong Marcos has expressed his willingness to forge ties with the United States in the expansion of the semiconductor industry here in the Philippines. Let's discuss that with Dan Lachica, President of the Semiconductor and Electronics Industries in the Philippines. Good evening, Sir Dan. Welcome to The Big Story. Okay, the big news of the day, of course, we were all looking at that as a bright spot. But the PMI of the Philippines, the manufacturing index, has been on expansionary mode compared to everyone else in the rest of Asia and even globally. It's been contracting. Exports have been contracting, but then we've been growing in terms of this. But you just had your meeting today.
The board meeting.
And from
yesterday.
5% growth year on year that was being expected in 2023,
Right.
now what's your outlook, sir? What's happening?
Well, we're looking at a contraction of 9 to 10%. By the way, good evening, Danny and Gretchen. So yeah, a contraction of about 9 to 10%.
Okay.
And I'm basing that based on the September numbers. We're running around $34 billion. And if you extend that through the rest of the year, we're probably going to be looking at $45 to $46 billion, which is about 9% of the record 2022 number of $49.09 billion.
Is it because of the global economic slowdown? What's happening around the world that's causing this dip in exports?
Yes, all of the above. In fact, we started the year, as you know, with a 15% contraction in Q1.
Okay.
It's, well, of course, there's the global recession, the high interest rates, and of course, the geopolitical conditions, the war between Russia and Ukraine, and of late, you know, Israel and Palestine. And there's been an inventory correction as well. So those are the factors that kind of spelled, you know, this contraction for the industry.
What do you mean by inventory
Correction. In other words, there were a buildup of inventory, but the demand was kind of lower than expected. So now you have excess inventory that has to be used up, you know, before you go back to normal production schedules.
Sir, sorry, 9 to 10% contraction year on year
Based
by
on
the end of
2022.
2020.
2022.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're looking at maybe still high,
Okay.
of about $45 to $46 billion, right? But smaller than last year's number. But we hope to recover hopefully
year,
by
what's-
next year.
yeah.
You were telling me something a while ago before our chat that the semiconductor industry is the #1 export of the Philippines. I mean, can you give us a
Yes.
look into this industry for those who don't know much about it?
Sure.
Where are factories located? Where do we export? Which countries do we export to? Just an overview.
Yeah. Well, that $49 billion is actually broken into several sectors. The biggest one would be semiconductors. We call it SMS, or Semiconductor Manufacturing Services. And this would be the multinationals such as Texas Instruments, Analog Devices, onsemi, Microchip, Amcor, Anam. So among these semiconductor companies, mostly multinationals, you know, and they're located in up north, in Clark, in Baguio, in Cebu, and Calabarzon. And then the other 30% would be what we call the EMS, or box builds. A box may be a cell phone, a camera, office equipment, telecommunications products. So, and again, most of them are in Calabarzon and in Cebu. Yeah, go
How
ahead,
much
please.
does President Marcos care about this industry at this point, and what's he trying to do to improve our chances here of being more competitive in the region?
That's a good question. In fact, I was pleasantly surprised. I joined the side meetings during the APEC last week. I didn't attend the APEC meeting, so I was listening to your interviews. I wasn't part of that. But specifically, there were 2 meetings last Monday with Secretary Fred, with the Semiconductor Industry Association and Semiconductor Equipment Manufacturers International. Both of them are SEIPI's international partner associations. We have about 13 of them, you know, China, France, and everything, because we're a global industry, if you will. That's why we have these partners. Now, of course, Secretary Fred Pascual of DTI invited the CEOs of the companies that the Philippines is open for business, and we're promoting the ease of doing business, improvements in the economy and infrastructure, and some of the things that they fed back to Secretary Fred. One of them would be, this is from SEMI, the semiconductor equipment manufacturers. They said that, everybody and their mother, all the countries have a CHIPS Act. The Philippines should have one, right?
Yeah.
And basically, and again, for those who are not familiar, the U.S. started off with the CHIPS Act in terms of onshoring or bringing back semiconductor wafer fabrication to the shores of the United States. This is what I used to do in Silicon Valley for 16 years before I came back, right? And so the wafer fabs in Silicon Valley were basically offshored. But now they're realizing, because there's a big threat to the semiconductor supply chain security, and so they're bringing back this capability, onshoring. And so that's what the CHIPS Act is about, and about $52 billion of that will go towards subsidizing companies to build in the States and or, like maybe in the Philippines, to shore up the semiconductor operations that we have. But in the Philippines, what we have would be the assembly, test, and packaging operations, which is the back end. We import the wafers, all right, and we test them, assemble them, and package them into these black things with feet we call integrated circuits. And so, so basically, the semi guys are saying we should come up with our own CHIPS Act, not just to build up on our strength, which is ATP, but to
What's ATP?
assembly, test, and packaging, from the wafers to the black thingies. But
higher in the value chain.
Yeah, move up the value chain to include integrated circuit design, to design the components that go to the wafer, and more importantly, the wafer fab. What the wafer fab is because today, if you have the design on Gerber files, we send them to Taiwan.
And then
for
Taiwan benefits
prototyping.
from that.
Well, it's more expensive, it's longer, and of course, the intellectual property is lost. And then, so we don't have that capability. And when Senator Rick Scott of the U.S. asked the question, so what's going to happen? Not that it's going to happen, but what if China invades Taiwan? What's going to happen with the Philippine electronics industry? I said, it'll disappear.
Oh, wow.
Why?
Yeah.
Because our wafers are coming from Taiwan. This is what we process. And so that's why I've suggested to Secretary Fred and even the President's office that we should build a wafer fab in the Philippines. And so we do have, SEIPI has a proposal for DOST to put up an IC design training lab and build a prototype wafer fab. But more importantly, during those meetings, you kind of convince Sec Fred and the President to mention to these companies to invest in wafer fabs in the Philippines, specifically two companies. One has IC design operations.
You can't name
Well,
it.
I think it's, well, we talked about it in San Francisco.
I'm curious.
Go
which
ahead.
brands take their semiconductors from us?
Well, U.S. multinationals are probably the best candidate. One in particular, well, maybe I shouldn't say the name specifically because they're U.S. Public companies. But one is up north, right?
Sabihin mo na. Wala naman na mag-ano.
Well, it's not rocket science. When I say a big company up north in Clark, you can pretty much know who it is, right? Without me saying who it is. But the other one is probably more attractive because it's growing its IC design operation. And like I said, you have IC design, you have back end, in the middle you have wafer fab. So the President actually mentioned that when he was talking to the representatives of this, the corporate executives of these companies. But then again, what are the asks? To be able to put up something like that, these companies basically express their concern about the cost of operations.
The energy prices,
Energy,
the taxes,
logistics,
we're still not, Did the
incentives.
President address these to you directly or to the semiconductor industry that he's going to maybe, keep the incentives or at least rationalize,
Subsidize.
because the taxation situation has still been there, or subsidize the energy
Yeah.
issue?
Well, as you know, with the previous administration, I really opposed the incentives rationalization of CREATE. And to this day, I still do. I think it was a big mistake.
Right.
What's happened was we've lost companies, shut down, capital flight. And there's one in particular which is really painful because there's one multinational company in the Philippines. The country president told the government before, please don't push through with this incentives rationalization. Our parent company is coming up with this expansion. If we push through with this,
We'll
it's
just
not
not
going to
do
come.
it. Yeah.
Well, guess what?
They
They
did it,
put
yeah.
their $1.3 billion expansion in Vietnam.
Could you give us a better idea, sir, of the numbers that we've lost because of the CREATE?
Well-
Maybe in terms of employment, in terms of potential.
Prior to the start of CREATE, the capital flight I estimated talking to our members was something to the order of about $3 billion and about 100,000 workers. And of course, when we attended the hearings, it was like the boy who cried wolf. And yet we're happy it's happening today.
Okay.
Because the nature of our industry is such that, I mean, example on your cell phones, every 6 months or so, the technology changes. So if you don't put new products, investments in new products in the Philippines, guess what? We're going to be stuck with legacy products. And then when these legacy products become obsolete, the 3 million direct and indirect workers, the $49
Yeah,
billion,
what's gonna happen
you're going to kiss it goodbye, right? And so when this gentleman from SEMI said, build a chip, come up with your own CHIPS Act, what he's referring to was a national effort to attract the semiconductor business, not just ATP, but the front end wafer fab, right? And so to your point, Danny, the president didn't go into the details of the improvements in CREATE,
Okay.
but he said that there are, and so we're
Okay.
looking forward to that. In fact,
Okay.
the House Ways and Means chaired by Congressman Salceda has finished its version, and on the 28th we'll be meeting with the Senate Ways and Means, Senator Win Gatchalian, to discuss the Senate version. So,
But what are you pushing for at this point, sir?
well,
After all is said and done with CREATE
it's
today?
good that the VAT exemption has been clarified because we have a parts localization program. The way the law was written before, if you're supplying to exporters, you're VAT-free. But they implemented VAT on that with CREATE. And so what will happen is the exporters will just order
Move to
from
another
outside.
country.
12%, not move, but order the materials, import the materials. And so your local businesses, because they're 12% more expensive, will lose out, right?
Okay.
So, and what I was
So
saying
slash
before,
VAT.
yeah, so
Number
that's
one.
been corrected.
Okay.
But the version I saw stipulates still a 20% corporate income tax
Right.
after the transition period. Still too high.
Right.
I know I'm probably, it's wishful thinking, but if we could bring back the 5% GIE to offset the high cost of power, the high cost of logistics, and even labor, if you count all the holidays, then we'll have a better chance of attracting investments. So the president talked about CREATE. He also addressed the fact that there might be some changes in the investment structure because right now we have FIRB and PEZA and the other IPAs, investment priority areas. So that might change also. So we're looking forward to that. And of course, specifically addressing the cost of power. Our power is more than twice the cost of Vietnam's. Our logistics is 1.7 times the cost of Vietnam. And so those need to be addressed, whether mitigated by some tax incentives or whatever, if we're going to be able
For
to
now,
attract
yeah.
this
Well, you're talking
semiconductor
about
investments.
legislation and government intervention, but what market opportunities are you seeing for this last quarter and for the next year for those who want to invest in this industry?
Well, there are, since electronics really is what you call high tech, right? So a lot of products being introduced like components for artificial intelligence, virtual reality, electric vehicles. So for us to be able to attract these expansions for these devices, then we need to have a favorable investment environment, the ease of doing business as well, right? And so, but again, I go back to semiconductors. We need a wafer fab in the Philippines. I don't know if you read the news that there's a new Fab 4. I don't know if you're old enough to know who the Fab 4 is, but
Enlighten us.
The Fab 4 was a term used for the Beatles.
Okay.
But the Fab 4 for semiconductor manufacturing today is US, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan.
Right.
Well, why not the Fab 5?
Right.
Why can't the Philippines be included in that list? And so that's what I'm hoping will happen. I mean, in San Francisco, even Presidential Advisor Dec Go was there. And in the sidelines, we were at the 28th investment night of PEZA, and he asked me to, he wanted to talk more about the semiconductor industry. So I'm looking forward to that. So we have to offset the high operating costs with regulatory measures, the ease of doing business.
As you
and
move into
incentives.
AI and digitalization of
my
our
next
businesses
question,
and our EV vehicles, there's definitely going to be more demand on that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
potential.
What are your thoughts on AI in the industry here in the Philippines? Are we in a good position, and what needs to be done to harness
Well,
that?
first of all, I tell people, I've met a lot of people with AI, and I'm not talking about the technology.
Is that going to be a bane or a boon for the industry?
Well,
Are we ready to
we
have
are
that
ready
technology?
because the applications of AR are far-reaching. It's going to improve the quality, the efficiency, and all that. We just need to be careful, especially when you use ChatGPT. It generates information based on collective data. But just like, when you work on computers, garbage in, garbage out.
And bias thinking,
Yes.
Western
So we
bias.
just have to make sure that the source of the data is sound, right? Otherwise, we'll get into trouble. But AI applications.
But for SEIPI in particular, for the manufacturing industry, what are the immediate applications of AI that can be harnessed?
For example, if you do inspection of products, right?
Okay.
Instead of just the tedious task, repetitive task of doing inspections and all that, you can just use your artificial intelligence database, big data, to kind of shorten and make the inspection process more efficient. Preventive maintenance of equipment. You can actually do predictive maintenance of the machine, fix it, repair it before the breakdown happens. Right, so just a lot of applications. Even in logistics.
Exciting for you. Exciting.
Oh yes.
Okay.
Even in logistics, like coming here, AI would tell me, okay, the most efficient way, better than ways to get here, right? But
That is
it's based on
AI.
data.
Those are
Tell me.
applications of AI
Yeah.
that we don't notice on a day-to-day basis, right? But we do see a lot of promise in the industry.
Absolutely.
It's good that you had a conversation with our president and his cabinet, and we hope for the reforms to happen.
We're looking forward to that. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much for joining us on this Friday night. Dan Lachica, President of the Semiconductor and Electronics Industries in the Philippines Incorporated.
Taking a quick break after that. When it comes to Christmas light displays, Meralco sure knows how to do it right, as bright, colorful lights once again illuminated its Pasig compound. Let's take a look at this year's Liwanag Park when the big story returns. Stay with us. And you're still watching the big story here on One News. The government said that 17 Filipino seafarers captured by Houthi rebels in the Red Sea remain unharmed. The Department of Migrant Workers said it has received word that the hijacked vessel is now in Yemen. The DMW has also reached out to the families of the hostages and extended assistance. Now, for its part, the DFA said coordination with other nations is ongoing. So far, the Filipino hostages are safe and the Houthis have not asked for ransom. The rebel faction is protesting Israel's airstrikes in Gaza.
Let's go to the world of sports. The Final Four of the UAAP Season 86 Men's Basketball Tournament is finally here. Now, action begins at 2 p.m. tomorrow with the top-seeded UP Fighting Maroons taking on the 4th-seeded Ateneo Blue Eagles. UP enters the game carrying a twice-to-beat advantage. Now, in the other game, 2-seed De La Salle Green Archers only need to beat 3-seed NU Bulldogs once to advance to the finals. Both teams are out to end their respective finals droughts after the 6 p.m. game. The matches will take place at the Smart Araneta Coliseum.
And of course, our outfits today.
Kaya nga eh. Oo.
Twice to beat.
Battle of Katipunan na naman.
We can do
Mukhang,
this.
Medyo mag-aalay tayo ng itlog.
Ala.
One of the original Christmas attractions in the metro is making a return after a 3-year hiatus due to the pandemic. And more than 1 million LED lights once again illuminated the Meralco compound, which included a 6-feet Meralco lantern. Various attractions can also be seen in the compound to truly feel the Christmas spirit. Now, there's a giant Belen, a church, the OG Tranvia or the Meralco train, and of course, the giant Christmas tree adorned with solar panels is also a show stealer. The tradition is finally back this year with a more extravagant, vibrant, and joyful theme called Liwanag City. All-in din ang Liwanag Park with a Christmas Bazaar. The Liwanag Park will be open every day from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. until January 6, 2024. Now, according to Meralco Chairman and CEO Manny V. Panghelinan, this Christmas lighting event holds a special place in his heart.
Of all the Christmas events or Christmas parties that I attend every year, the most meaningful to me and to all of us within the group is this lighting ceremony because it symbolizes many, many things. For one, we open our gates to the public and to your families so that we can share the blessings and the joys of Christmas each year. You call this the Liwanag Park because sabi nga ng motto ng Meralco, magbigay ng liwanag sa mga kinabukasan.
All right, the theme of this broadcast is semiconductors, electronic equipment, EVs, lights. So before we let you go, here's our big picture for tonight. It's an all-Filipino-made electric modern PUV. It was unveiled by the company Basic Energy to the officials of the Transportation Department. The company says they aim to contribute to the government's goal of making public transportation more comfortable and safe for the riding public. They say that this modern Jeep is also environment-friendly because aside from using electricity, it could also run through solar power, making it more efficient than the vehicles that are powered by diesel. And when fully charged, these units could run for over 100 kilometers at kaya rin daw kahit sa patag or mabundok na lugar. Sa patag.
Napakaganda. Nako, sobrang maganda yung design
100 kilometers.
The first modern jeepneys, di ba? Pero ang tanong dyan, at the end of the day, magkano electricity bill mo?
Solar daw, solar.
Tsaka
So
magkano yung modern
battery.
jeepney? We
yun
also
lang
had
yung
that
problem.
conversation this week about that, right? Are they able to bring down the cost?
Exactly.
It is still at 1 million and above.
Ay, wow.
Diba,
For each
yun?
jeepney,
Yes,
di ba?
right.
Kaya hindi hindi nag-shift pa rin, di ba? They need to make cooperatives just to be able
That's
to
right.
afford
We'll
it.
have that conversation next week.
Marami
Join
pang
us.
pag-uusapan.
And together, let's feel the Christmas spirit. Enjoy the traffic on the way home.
And have a festive weekend.
That is for the show tonight. We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thank you and have a good weekend.